Considering it's been over 20 years since Avatar: Last Airbender first aired, you expect the voice cast to sound vastly different today, and yet they sound pretty much the exact same as they did all those years ago, with one exception.
Hey, I'm Zach Tyler Eisen, and I play Aang. Aang, he's a young kid, still has a good time. He's really funny, very powerful.
Use your imagination. This is just what Aang sounds like in his 30s. I promise you I'm him. He's there, he's in me.
And that got me thinking, what would an older Aang sound like if his original voice actor played him today? In this video, I'll be taking you through a brief version of my creative process in planning, drawing, animating in a rigged-based 2D animation software by the name of Moho, and hopefully faithfully represent what the Aang that we know and love would realistically look and sound like in his 30s. Okay, so the first step was finding a clip of Aang's voice actor that I could animate Aang to. And considering that this voice clip of Zach talking about his voice change gave me this idea to begin with, I figured it was perfect for what I was trying to make. Normally at this stage of animation, I'd be making an animatic or storyboard to plan out the movements of the animation, but considering that this was a rigged animation with minimal movement, I planned it wasn't necessary. Instead, I just made a singular sketch in Photoshop that would act as a foundation that I could later trace in Moho. Since Moho has a feature that allows you to make shapes that are on the same layer appear as though they're merged, I tend to avoid overcomplicating things by layering simple shapes instead. This also keeps the design simple and easy to manage. Moho also allows you to customize the vector lines themselves and make them either boil or have this like traditional texture look to them, which I really like. So you'll notice that a lot of my strokes here have that traditional touch that I much prefer over sharp digital lines that you otherwise would get. To give the character some depth, I did add some colored shapes on the face and ears to make them appear shaded. I also eventually made a reference layer from Aang's head, which I then masked to the neck layer and changed the color to the shadow color to make it look like the head was casting a shadow on the neck. Now, I've never been a fan of Aang's like chin, neck, beard personally, but I decided to add it because, hey, we gotta make it accurate. This is real Aang when he's older. This is what he looks like. And honestly, it kind of grew on me. Maybe more so than it was before I started this project. Still not crazy about it conceptually, but it's still, I don't mind it as much as I think I used to. Lastly, I ended up adjusting some of the face features just to make them match the sketch a little bit so that I am ready to get into rigging and I can focus on rigging as opposed to adjusting the forms of the face. Okay, once I had everything ready for rigging, I converted the folder containing all of my layers and all of my folders into a bone layer and started creating the bones from the chest upwards. Think of the parenting of these bones as a tree. Every bone will influence every following bone that is parented to it. I tend to create bones that are parented to each section of the face, and each section is then parented to a master bone that it controls everything. In other words, and for example, I have a bone for each part of the eye, and then each of those eye bones are connected to a master eye bone, and that master eye bone is connected to a master face bone, and that master face bone is then connected to the head bone, and that head bone is connected to the... It kind of just keeps going on and on and on, but that's the idea. And one of the things that I think Moho desperately needs, among a few other things, is better rig management and presentation in terms of how the UI shows what bone is parented to what bone. I think it's done better in software like Spine 2D, or maybe I just prefer it that way. But yeah, things get really messy and complicated as the rig becomes more complex or advanced over time. Next, I began binding bones. Now, Moho has several methods to binding vertices or layers to bones, and I typically choose the one that's best suited to each specific area of the rig. Now, this is where a lot of trial and error happens. Much of my time from this point onward is rigging the character up and testing to see if things don't break or work or won't work. What I typically like to do is move off of the setup frame and make a temporary test keyframe with the bone's rotation or position adjusted, so that I can quickly see what I'm changing and whether or not things are breaking really quickly. I then drew every single mouth in the mouth chart used for animating lip sync and grouped them into a folder that I had turned into a switch layer. And these switch layers, if you don't know, are basically a folder containing a collection of different layers, in this case, a mouth, and it basically just gives you the control to show what layer in that switch layer you want to be visible or active at a time. When setting up smart actions, Moho can get a little bit finicky, and honestly, throughout this process, there was kind of a lot of trial and error that there honestly shouldn't be considering how many times I've done this, but I ended up adjusting where the first and second position would be. For those those of you who don't understand how smart actions work in Moho, essentially I am creating an action that can be triggered by a predetermined angle of a control bone. This means I'll have one control bone each for eyebrows looking surprised or angry, the eyes looking wide or squinting, the mouth smiling or frowning, and the head looking left to right. I also created a smart action for the mouth poses and move the chin bone down according to specific mouth poses. This way, whenever I switch to a mouth pose, it will naturally move the chin down to the exact position that it should be according to that mouth pose. Now, a lot of people ask me how long my animations or projects take me to do. In this case, I actually do have an answer because I did screen record the entire process. I'll put on screen right now however long this ended up taking. And if that looks or sounds like a lot, it probably is, but it definitely could have been a less enjoyable experience if not for my setup actually supporting the work that I do. Meet FlexiSpot's dual motor E6 Max standing desk. Equipped with the near silent dual motors, this standing desk effortlessly lifts up to 330 pounds with smooth, reliable motion. Engineered for durability, it can withstand repeated impacts of up to 330 pounds over 20,000 cycles without compromising stability. With a tensile strength of 28,000 pounds per square inch, surpassing even steel endurance, the E6 Max sets a new standard for strength and long-term performance in standing desk design. The desk also comes in a variety of surface finishes designed to complement any space, and its intuitive, vibrant memory control buttons let you save your preferred sitting and standing heights, making transitions effortless and tailored to your daily routine. FlexiSpot is confident enough to provide a 10-year warranty on your desk frame and motor, and a 2-year warranty for the control panel and electronics. Do your body and future self a favor by investing in a workspace that actually supports the work that you do. For more information, click the link in my bio, and a special thanks to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video. Before I began animating, I blocked out the key poses of the animation by repeatedly listening to the same audio clip and trying to imagine what Aang's body language would realistically look like based off what I heard. Now, I have filmed myself acting out dialogue for previous animations I've made in the past, but it seemed a little unnecessary for this considering how minimal the animation is and what it was supposed to be. A talking head animation with minimal movement. And a quick tip for if you are trying to find those key poses, it's a lot easier to do so if the keys are set to step as opposed to linear, just so you're not distracted by that in-between animation between your key poses. Since I animate on 2s and have memorized the mouth chart for animation, I actually don't mind the lip syncing process that much anymore. Ever since university, it's been a whole lot easier and faster and more fun, as it's an instantly gratifying way to tie your animation to the audio that you're animating to. One of the most fun things about rigging in Moho, you can add physics to bones. Normally an animation like this would have a lot of secondary motion because I'd be able to add it to hair and everything else that is moving. There's not many opportunities to add physics to an animation like this, but there is slightly some movement that could be added in his collar, which I ended up adding. To bring it to life, I added a bone to each end of the collar that would be moving and enabled bone dynamics for each of those collar bones. After fine-tuning the physics settings, the collar now naturally reacts to Aang's movement, adding subtle realism and fluidity to the animation. Lastly, to fill in the in-betweens and adjust the timing, I'll turn most of the keyframes that are currently set to step into Bezier and tweak the timing of each bone. Not gonna lie, I find this process can sometimes make the animation look a little bit too smooth for my liking. Thus, I actually kind of prefer the choppy animatic type movement that I was left with before this process started. So much so that I decided to make a second version without any of the smoothing. Let me know in the comments which one you think looks better, because we are done.
You know what? People are very understanding that puberty happens, so I'm very happy. But yeah, sometimes every now and again they're like, "Wait a minute, no, I don't believe you," and I just have to, use your imagination. This is just what Aang sounds like in his 30s. I promise you, I'm him. He's there. He's in me. You know what? People are very understanding that puberty happens, so I'm very happy. But yeah, sometimes every now and again they're like, "Wait a minute, no, I don't believe you," and I just have to, use your imagination. This is just what Aang sounds like in his 30s. I promise you, I'm him. He's there, he's in me.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you left a like. And if you've ever wondered what the gang from Avatar: The Last Airbender would look like as college students, you're gonna want to watch this video right here. Thanks again for FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video, and if you're interested in any of their standing desks, there will be links in the description for them.